Section 4. You will hear a lecture on fingerprint identification. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
Welcome to our technology lecture. I am Professor John Stewart. Last week we talked about astronomy. Today I'd like to introduce you a lecture on fingerprint identification. Identifying fingerprints has been a vital tool in the crime fighter's arsenal for more than 100 years. According to the record, an Argentine police officer was the first one to use the method of criminal identification in 1892. He proved that a woman was guilty of murder because a bloody fingerprint at the crime scene had to be hers. Nowadays, fingerprint forensics are about to take a huge leap forward, from physical to chemical. Scientists have unveiled a new technique that can extract a lot of information. So, the physical print itself is identification, but there's a lot of information that's contained in those fingerprints. Then, what are the main functions of fingerprint identification technology? Scientists have summarized its 4 functions. The first one is to create an image, which is an important beginning. And then the second one is to get characteristics. And the next one is to keep information. And the last one is to contrast data. Meanwhile, some experts have pointed out that fingerprints are actually a transfer from our fingers onto an object to chemicals. Those chemicals could be things that we've handled already, or recently, or they could be secretions, oil, and sweat from our bodies. We can use a technique named mass spectrometry to identify all those substances, even if they are in tiny amounts. Graham Cooks from Purdue University in the United States has explained how the technique works in his paper. As he points out, experts can get the information in a very, very simple and straightforward way using a new type of mass spectrometry. His experiment is to make a fine mist of a solvent-like water and to provide an electrical charge to those little droplets that constitute the mist and to direct that at the object, for example, a fingerprint, and then spray that in a very fine fashion with high precision as these droplets arrive. They create a thin film, liquid obviously, on top of that surface. The chemicals in the fingerprint dissolve in that liquid. Another drop arrives, splashes against the film, creates smaller droplets, and those smaller droplets are sucked up into an instrument, the mass spectrometer, then dried off, and they are identified. The whole process of recording the mass spectra of a single spot on a fingerprint takes a fraction, a few tenths of a second. So the last step in the experiment then is to create the image of a fingerprint that is not to keep the spatial information, but to represent only one of the chemicals. Experts could build up different layers of colors for different chemicals. And so, in the mass spectrum, it doesn't matter if experts don't have to say in advance what molecule they are looking for. They can just screen through all of this data and find out what drugs, virtually any type of organic or even biological molecule that can be seen. Maybe Someone will ask if this equipment can be taken to a crime scene, or can it only be used in a lab? The answer is yes. We can take the equipment to a crime scene. Actually, scientists have built a series of small mass spectrometers, the smallest of which is merely a 4-kilogram instrument that's hand-portable. You can walk around with it, and you could take it to a crime scene and do the experiment that we've been talking about. Among this chemical information of the fingerprints that our scientists have collected, we can find more information about the people themselves. Many scientists, including Graham Cooks, are more interested in this new research field. Some scientists have begun to do research on whether the distribution of compounds are the result of people's metabolism. As we all know, more and more people are worried about their metabolism, which is very important for people's daily life. Some other factors on the topic about whether we can find out about people's age and their sex. If we can, that will be a great contribution to medicine, law, and other fields. The third one is that some experts even study where the things in fact are going wrong in terms of people's own biology. That, of course, would be a huge project, but it is necessary to life. I really hope that if you are interested in this topic, you could join in on our research group. Of course, that is a research area that we don't have all the answers here, but we certainly have a mountain of data coming in, which should enable us to address these questions. Okay, if you want to know more information about fingerprint identification, you can read our journal online, or attend a lecture next Friday at the University of Bath, or visit our website. The address is...
This is the end of section 4. You now have half a minute to check your answer.
Section 4. You will hear an interview with a marketing director. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 34. Now listen and answer questions 31 to 34.
Continuing our theme of business marketing, I have with me today Mr. Brian Kinsella, who is here to talk about the differences between marketing a product and marketing a service.
Good morning. Now I understand that many of you here today are interested in a career in services marketing. Well, I've been the marketing director for Oceania Travel for nearly 11 years, so I feel that I can present what I consider to be the most important aspects of marketing a service. However, before I begin, I want to clarify what I mean by services marketing. This not only means aspects like holiday destinations, but also professional services such as legal advice. In short, anyone that sells a service. Actually, a lot of the traditional services such as lawyers, accountants, etc., have not felt too comfortable marketing their services. It's almost perceived in industries such as these that the need to market indicates a weakness in the services provided. However, more and more such industries are realizing the importance of marketing to sustain their customer numbers, especially when their competitors are marketing themselves. Now, the main difference between marketing a product and a service is that the customers cannot understand exactly what the service will be. They can see a product and can comprehend exactly what the product will do for them. A service is more intangible. By that, I mean whatever each customer gains from the service is often very personal. For example, with a travel agency, clients choose to travel abroad for a multitude of motives. Some people travel overseas for the experience and really want to get to know the culture of the local people. Others wish to escape from reality, totally relax in sophisticated comfort, and be waited on hand and foot. Obviously, our clients will not be judging what we offer by the same standards, and travel agents, like other such service industries, have an extremely difficult job in satisfying a range of customers from diverse backgrounds with different expectations.
Before you hear the rest of the recording, you have some time to look at questions 35 to 40. Now listen and answer questions 35 to 40.
Our company has overcome this dilemma in a number of ways. First of all, our travel consultants are given extensive training in customer service and buyer behavior. Our aim is not just to be a profit-making organization, but also to meet and exceed the expectations or dreams of our clients. Our mission statement, in fact, is primarily to offer a service which is above and beyond the hopes of our clients. In addition, we regularly visit the tourist destinations we promote and inform all of our staff about any changes in specific areas. Not only is it important to be fully informed about every possible aspect of the service you are marketing, it is also essential to constantly improve the service offered. At Oceania Travel, we regularly conduct surveys with all of the people that visit our resorts of choice. Any negative feedback we try to remedy at once. Our clients are met by a company representative during their stay, and we have a set procedure for dealing with any complaints. Our clients are not expected to have to approach the hotel reception, as we have a 24-hour contact service direct to our representatives, and this representative should always welcome any customer problems or questions. In the event of a complaint, the representative will then try to remedy the complaint with the hotel. If the problem cannot be rectified by the hotel manager, our representative is authorized to remedy the situation him or herself. For situations beyond the representative's authority, our complaints department is contacted. The complaints department guarantees a solution within the day. If the customer is still not satisfied, they are welcome to approach our head office on their return. So you see that marketing a service is catering more for the client's expectations than anything else, and it is that which makes services marketing a very intricate business. Now that's the end of my presentation, but if there is anything you want to ask, then please feel free to do so. Thank you.
That is the end of section 4. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Section 4. You will hear part of a lecture on cities of the future. You now have 30 seconds to read questions 31 to 37.
OK, we've been looking at how societies will develop in the future and at the increase in the size of cities. So I want to talk to you today about the key considerations in these cities of the future. There are 3 key elements I want to look at, and these are the new features they will have, issues of size, and the main problems to be considered. First of all, individual transportation will be a big factor in these new megacities as public transport becomes unmanageable. There'll be a huge rise in the use of segways, which are personal transporters like motorized scooters. As a result, and partly also to reduce pollution, roads will be altered so that they are narrower and will take up less of a city's space than they do currently. Naturally, this is a major change to the infrastructure, and something that may hinder it is the huge amount of investment it will require. The next thing is, what is going to happen to the commercial areas? We do not want these to become even larger concrete jungles than they are at present, so we have to look at design. And current designs for city development include building gardens on the roofs of these buildings to make a more pleasant environment for workers. And you may think that these areas will expand to cope with increased commercial activity. In fact, the prediction is that they will cover 1/5 of the area that they do at present as we build upwards. The exception to this is shopping centres, which we predict will expand with more and more temperature-controlled malls. What may cause difficulties is that the superstores will be confined to the outer edges of the city, as they will be too big to fit into the new malls. Then, of course, there are the residential areas, and these will undergo their own changes. One particular development will be houses which are built from glass, as innovations in this material allow it to provide light without causing problems with temperature inside a building. The residential areas will not be allowed to expand without limit, as happens in some areas at present, and their size will be restricted to a population of 15,000. One issue, which has yet to be resolved, and I'm not sure it ever will be, is how we manage to house older residents. They will be increasing in numbers as time goes on. Finally, how will these cities live? We know we have limited energy sources, so what will we do? Well, something currently in development, which will be a feature, is that waste is going to become an energy source. For example, to provide gas in homes. Also, as new technology and systems are developed, we will find that energy plants will become smaller. Another energy source we could use, but one which raises issues of having enough space and too much noise, is wind farms. Because of the problems, I'm not convinced these will be the grand solution to our energy problems that we thought they were going to be.
You now have 15 seconds to read questions 38 to 40.
Now, moving on to looking at the social aspect of cities, we need to look at housing and how people will live. Cities currently have flats in the centre, populated by single people and wealthier residents, and families tend to move to the outskirts. In the future, the centre of cities will see a dramatic change. We will see many more examples of cooperative buildings. This is where people join together to form a company that owns the building they live in. And despite continuing shortages, there will also be a rise in the provision of retirement homes in city centres, so that the elderly can have easy access to hospitals and shops. Recently, we have seen a levelling off in the growth of private housing, and I think that will not change. But we are likely to see more social housing, as far fewer people will be able to afford to own their own homes. OK, now, if anybody has any...
That is the end of section 4. You will now have half a minute to check your answers.
Section 4. You will hear a monologue on the subject of the Celts. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40. Welcome to this introductory lecture on the Celts. Who were the Celts? The Celts were an Indo-European group, that is, related linguistically to the Greeks, the Germanic peoples, certain Italic groups and peoples of the Indian subcontinent. They arose in Central Europe at the beginning of the first millennium BC, and were an iron-using and horse-rearing peoples. By the end of the first millennium BC, their cultural group had spread up and down the Danube and Rhine, taking in Gaul, Ireland and Britain, across Central Europe into northern Italy and northern Spain. Their roaming across Europe led some of the Celtic tribes to sack Rome in 390 BC, creating a fear of the northern barbarians that was to haunt Romans for hundreds of years to come. The Celts are defined archaeologically by the type sites of Hallstatt and Latene, the former being taken to relate to an earlier phase of cultural development. Hallstatt, an ancient salt mining area, was excavated from 1876 onwards by the Viennese Academy of Sciences, and provided the first classification of the prehistoric Celts. In 1858, the waters of Lake Neuchâtel in Switzerland sunk to a low level, revealing a large prehistoric settlement with a huge number of surviving artifacts. The nearby town of Latene gave its name to the second phase of Celtic cultural development. However, please note that these phases overlap through time and are defined according to geographical area. Let's look at each of these, taking the Hallstatt first. Hallstatt culture is characterized in 4 stages. A and B were during the Late Bronze Age, from about 1200 to 700 BC. C was in the Early Iron Age, from about 700 to 600 BC. D was from about 600 to 475 BC. The Hallstatt culture spanned Central Europe, with its centre in the area around Hallstatt in central Austria. There were 2 distinct cultural zones, the eastern and the western. At the start of the period, long-distance trade was already well established in copper and tin, the basic requirements for manufacture of bronze. From about 700 BC, trade in iron also became established. The Hallstatt area also already controlled the trade in salt, crucial when there were few other means to preserve food. Control of these 2 crucial trade goods, iron and salt, provided the basis for the accumulation of wealth and influence. From 800 BC, some burials of rich people can be identified in Central Europe, with grave goods such as wheeled wagons and iron swords. Hallstatt C saw the construction of fortified hilltop settlements to the north of the Alps. These had burial mounds holding very high-quality goods, such as vehicles and expensive imported treasures. By the time of the Hallstatt D period, these increasingly extravagant burial mounds were clustered around a few major hill forts to the southwest of the region. This suggests a development and a concentration of wealth and social power, possibly based on the development of Massilia, present-day Marseille, as a Greek trading port. The expansion of luxury trade brought greater opportunities for profit and helped to create an increasingly stratified society, with the development of a wealthy nobility. Over the period from 1846 to 1863, 1,000 graves were found at Hallstatt, with an astonishing range of artifacts, including clothing and salt mining equipment, as well as weapons, jewellery, pottery, and imported bronze vessels in the chieftains' graves. The La Tène era was the time of Celtic expansion and migration, and the time of formation of the myths. The La Tène culture is named after the site in Switzerland where it was first discovered. The La Tène people were those known to the Romans as Gauls, originally found in an area from eastern France to Bohemia. The La Tène culture spread rapidly from about 400 BC. The La Tène Celts settled in Spain in 450 BC, in northern Italy in 400 BC, invaded Rome in 390 BC, invaded Greece in 279 BC, invaded Galatia in modern Turkey in 270 BC. By 200 BC, they occupied the lands that are now Britain, the Netherlands, Brittany, Belgium, Germany and Switzerland. There is much debate over how much of the expansion into Britain was achieved through invasion and settlement, and how much was the expression of cultural transfer that accompanied trade and reflected the commonality of kinship and language of many tribes. There is little evidence for actual migration of La Tène people into Britain. Nevertheless, it does appear that the La Tène culture was more militarily focused than the Hallstatt one. The La Tène graves across Europe hold iron weapons, swords and spearheads, and wooden shields, as well as everyday items such as razors, yokes, cauldrons and jewellery. That is the end of section 4. You now have half a minute to check your answers.